Welcome back to the Tom and D Show. My name's Tom Fry. Darren Abram there. How you doing, buddy? You looks like you're in a either Saddam's palace or in a hotel room.
Right. Well, I am in a hotel room. I'm back in Denver, but not really, because my house is Airbnb'd out.
That's right. Yeah, you Airbnb it. It's beer money. I mean,
It's beer money. Tom and D. Tom and D.
Two middle-aged idiots. Man, you know what? I've got an axe to grind.
All right, grind your axe.
I've got an axe to grind. I've always been about being in the correct lane, you know, like when you're in traffic. Like I hate when people are slow in the left lane. I mean, it's always bothered me. It's kind of like, dude, get out of this lane. You know, it's like, what are you doing over here? You see some truck in the left just going down. Well, I can also relate this to when I'm at Costco. Yesterday, I went to Costco and, you know, people should stay in the same lanes they do when they're driving, because I am in the right lane, you know, and I'll go over and pick up something. But when I'm making that turn into the next aisle, this guy smashes right into me. And I said, "Are you from England?" And he says, "No, why?" And I said, "Because you're driving in the left lane, you know."
Dude, I had the right of way here in Costco. Come on.
I had the right of way in Costco. Another thing I always do when I come out of Trader Joe's or a grocery and like someone's, you know, "Can I grab that card?" I'm like, "It's low mileage, one owner." I'm like, "There's no wiggly wheels. I mean, take this, baby. You're going to enjoy it. It's a smooth ride."
Okay, well, that was fascinating.
Wasn't it, though? We could do a screenplay about it. Speaking of smooth, man, my guest is smooth. One of the smoothest bass players you've ever heard. And just a fascinating guy with a fascinating story. And I'll tell you one thing that you definitely know he's done. Do you know the song, "I spent the last year rocking out"? He co-wrote that song.
Right?
Yeah, Joe Walsh. He played with Joe Walsh in the Barnstorm, and he co-wrote that song.
What?
And yes, this is a legit A-lister we've got on the show today. So why waste any time?
Yeah.
Let's bring him on. Kenny Passarelli.
Hey guys.
Wow.
I liked your bit about the are you from England?
I say that to everyone when they're in the wrong lane in the grocery aisle.
I'm taking that, man. I'm totally taking that. Okay, so let's do our thing here.
So Kenny, man. So when did it all start? I mean, were you a kid that was always involved in music? Did you start at another instrument? I mean,
yeah,
you climbed some ladders.
I was born here in Denver, and when I was 7 years old, my parents were considerably older than me, and they were listening to a song called "Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom Pie." Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And they got me a toy trumpet. And then my father, because he was in the law enforcement here, the Police Protective Association sponsored an organization called the Denver Junior Police Band. It started in the early 50s, and it was the conductor was the ex-Navy band conductor in World War II, Brian Olivet. So he was a taskmaster. The organization was built on discipline. We wore little police outfits and sold tickets to our concerts. We recorded at the Denver Auditorium every year, our concerts. We played Lakeside for 4th of July, and we marched in every single parade. And the top band, the inaugural band, marched on Pennsylvania Avenue for the inauguration of the president. So I was in that organization from the time I was 7 until I was 16. The conductor was my private lesson teacher, because he was a trumpet player. And so I had 9 years of solid theory, Bach and Haydn. I couldn't play Miles. Wow. But I could play Bach and Haydn. And then the British invasion, and hanging out with some friends of mine who could afford to get some guitars. And I'd just kind of go and hang out because, you know, the trumpet, we were listening to the Beatles and the Byrds. And so I noticed everybody just wanted to play either guitar or drums. You know, they wanted to be Ringo or George. So I noticed somebody had, it's really weird that someone had in this room a 6-string Fender bass. And I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. They were made in the 60s. They're kind of like a tenor bass. They're not
is Kenny, is that the one that John Lennon plays when sometimes when he fills in on bass when Paul's playing piano? Because if you've
could very well be, and it's also, I've seen pictures of Jack Bruce playing one. Yeah. Anyway, I started. You know, my parents had bought me a little Spanish guitar from Oates, and I started teaching myself my left hand by listening to records. The first 4 strings, played along with records. My right hand was somewhat dexterous because of the trumpet, so I just kind of went from there to there. I started with my thumb and then started with my fingers. And within a year and a half, I was playing professionally with bands that were doing 3.2 bands. I was underage doing them for a couple of years. And that's how I got my start, playing bass. I'd play trumpet occasionally in, you know, some little R&B songs, but mostly it was centered on the bass. And I started getting a reputation around for, you know, playing well. I got a call from a friend of mine who was the son of the owner of the only kind of music store in town. It was on 17th Avenue downtown. It was called Happy Logan's. And that was the place where you go and drool over the equipment you couldn't buy. You know? So anyway, he called me and he said, "Hey, man," and so I'm fast forwarding through, you know, a couple bands and stuff I was doing in Colorado, and he says, "There's a guy. Do you know who Steve Stills is?" And this is 1969. And I said, "Of course, Buffalo Springfield. I actually saw them when they came through Denver at the Family Dog. It was their only tour, and I saw them. They blew me away." And I said, "I've listened to Super Session, so I'm hip to Steve Stills." He says, "Well, he's looking for a bass player. He's going to be in Gold Hill, Colorado." That was a place that when he was with Judy Collins, he hung out up there. And he has a friend that he's staying with. And I told him about you. So it was like February of 1969. A friend of mine, we drove up. It was like snowing and stuff. And we get to the front of this cabin. And in front of the cabin is a Bentley. This is it was a 68, 69 Bentley pulling a trailer with motocross bikes. I mean, this is pop star shit, okay? So I look at this and I go, "Oh my God." We knock on the door and Stephen Stills looks just like the CSN album cover. He's got the button-down shirt, the V-neck, and those boots and Levi's. I walk in, he says, "I've heard about you," and he hands me a joint, and he puts on the acetate of the CSN record. This is February. It wasn't released until August.
Yeah.
So producers get an acetate, which is a direct pressing from the tape, and it's only can be played about 25 times. The producer hears it and says it needs to be a little bit more low end, or take a little bit mid-range. That's the last thing they can do before the pressing takes over for vinyl. So he had the acetate on this tiny little portable stereo that had the turntable with 2 speakers, one left and right. I heard the CSN record before probably most people. And and I'm 19 and I'm hearing do 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 do. And I didn't know what to say. I just couldn't believe it. He played the entire album for me. And then he said, "What kind of bass do you play?" And I say, "Well, I play a Gibson." And he says, "No, no, no, no. You need to play this." And he had a 1961. He called it Grandma, and he still has that bass. And I've played it. It was on. He played bass on the CSN. I mean, Stephen was my teacher and mentor a couple of years later. But let me finish the story. he says, you got to play a Fender. I said, oh, my hands are too small. And he says, no, look at mine. It's the sound. I said, okay. And then next he says, so I've heard good things about you. I don't have a guitar. All I have is the bass. And he says, can you get me a guitar and do you have a place we can jam? And I said, yeah. So we hustled down to Boulder, and a friend of my friend John's had a 60s Strat, man. So the next day we race up. Now we're because Steven's so cool, my friend borrows a Porsche, and we drive up the 69 911, and Steven immediately wanted to drive it. So we got the guitar. We're in the Porsche. We're with Steve Stills. He wasn't really called Steven yet. It was now it was because of the CSN. So we go jam, we play. He says, man, you can do this. Here's my manager's card, David Geffen. And he said, give him a call and tell him that we talked, and I want to work with you. And he said, apparently we've got our first gig is something called Woodstock. We don't know anything about it.
Wow.
And that's going to be our first gig. And so I was like in shock, man, because I was in a band called The Beast, and The Beast was signed to Atco. I'd been with him for a year, and we got this deal, and we recorded in Clovis, New Mexico, at Norman Petty. Do you know who he is? Norman Petty was the producer of Buddy Holly, and that studio is where Buddy recorded. And this manager we had all these connections, and so we had recorded a record. I was signed to Atco, and I'm offered a gig of my life. So I'll never forget. I finished with Steven, and I'm saying I have to quit the band. And he said, listen, here's the schedule I got from him was that the release of the album is going to be in August. And then Woodstock was I can't remember when Woodstock, when was Woodstock?
I think it was in September.
Okay, so they were releasing the album in August, and then Woodstock was in September. Okay, so the schedule was stay in touch with Geffen. He'll tell you when we're going to start rehearsing. And so I had to quit the band, and I had still a few more gigs to do with them. And I was starting to feeling weird, man, physically, and I didn't know what it was. Well, it so happens, like most hippies back then, I got infectious hepatitis. So from, just joints and gals, who knows? And who knows? I got off tour, and my dad was, law enforcement here, and he looked at me, and my eyes were green, and he said, he took me to the police doctor. The guy touched my stomach. So, man, I was out of commission for 6 months. Wow. So the gig passed me by, but there was another part of the gig. Neil Young always was in competition with Steven in terms of control of the rhythm section. So my dream I'd quit my band. I was laid up in my parents' house for about 6 months. And I remember when the release of the CSN, prior to the release of the CSN, I'm thinking, well, the bus passed me by. I was I was just really, really depressed and trying to get well from the hepatitis thing. When it's infectious, you just have to rest.
Yeah.
Eat a lot of protein. And again, I was only 19. I was going to turn 20. So it was mostly just feeling like I lost the gig of my life.
Especially when you hear about how popular Woodstock was, and you're like, dude, I might have been on stage for that. Holy shit.
Well, those are things that always flash back, but this is prior to all of that. The record hadn't been released. This is March, April, May. And then I get well, and I joined a 3-piece band called Conal Implosion. They were originally out of DU. I mean, we opened when it was a 3-piece blues band. The guitar player was like a Clapton. The drummer was was real. The drummer was a real hustler. His name's Jim Shears, and he went to school with Donald Trump. So what does that tell you? Do you think he could get? Do you think he could get his gigs?
Yeah, insert joke here.
Next thing we know, we're managed by Shep Gordon of Ellis. You know, I mean, that's the kind of kid Jim was. Anyway, so I go to California with this 3-piece, and man, it's just like I'm digging it because I'm singing, and there's some tapes of me. We opened for Steve Miller at the Colorado University Student Union in 1969.
Wow.
And some great. I mean, the band was. We really were killer, but I was kind of like the blues. I don't know if I can do this at 20. You know, I can't. I haven't done enough to slit my throat or drink myself into oblivion because.
Yeah, you haven't gone through divorces and your dog.
Not yet.
And...
It's on its way, but it's not right now. So I started getting like, I come back. Things don't work out in California. We left. It was one of those leaving Hollywood in the middle of the night because you couldn't pay your rent. And then the Volkswagen breaks down in Aspen, the little station wagon, and we end up playing a Love-In in Aspen. That man, it's in the papers there. The Aspen, look up Conal Implosion. The Aspen papers. There's a picture of me playing in a field someplace, and everybody's up there rich and high on acid. So, anyway, I come back to my parents' house. I'm dragging. You know, my dad was pressuring me to go back to University of Denver. I had a full scholarship at DU and to be a lawyer. And he was just always pushing on that. And he says, it doesn't look like this is working out for you. Next thing I know, I get a call from a guy named Gabriel Delorme in Vancouver, who had heard me play with the Beast in Calgary, Vancouver, the year before. And this guy, when we were up in Canada, I remember we drove from Denver to Calgary first, and then to Edmonton. And when we got to Calgary, it was 45 below zero. And we're in a 1967 baby blue convertible Ford Galaxy with 6 people in the car and pulling a trailer. Okay. But I was up there. This guy comes up to me named Gabriel Delorme and says, man, I really like your playing. Would you like to come over to the apartment? And my girlfriend and I would love to have you over, have some tea. And I'm a guitar player. Well, we get over there, and this guy could play Segovia, and then he could turn around and play Hendrix. Later in his life, Stevie Ray Vaughan would go up and pay homage to Gabe Delorme. He was a genius, man. He passed away too early from diabetes, but he became my next mentor. As soon as I heard this guy play, I came back to Canada, to Vancouver. And again, I'd left school, so I was eligible for the draft. And, but, you know, so far so good. My dad, when I said I'm going to Canada, my dad was just going, oh my God. And so I'm in Vancouver. I'm playing in this band called Django, DJANGO, like Django Reinhardt.
Reinhardt, yeah.
We're playing in an after-hours club next door to it's part of we played the Elegant Parlor, and next door was a place called the Shanghai Junk. And guess whose place that was? It was Tommy Chong's brother, Stanley Chong.
What?
And it was a strip joint bar where all the loggers came in, show us your tits. And Tommy Chong, who had been a successful musician, he was with Bobby, somebody in the Vancouvers. They were signed.
Was he a drummer? Because he was.
No. He's a guitar player. Tommy was a rhythm guitar player in the Bobby, somebody in the Vancouvers. They were signed to Motown. So he already had been in a group that I think had some charted stuff, but he came back to Vancouver, and he was always into comedy. And his brother, I think actually he financed this bar, and his brother ran it. And in between the gals stripping, they had a group called City Lights, and it was the equivalent to what Belushi and all those people had in Chicago. Okay, so
like
you had
a city kind of a thing.
Total Second City Vancouver style. You had a guy that did mime. You had two or three girls, and Tommy and Gabriel, the musician, the genius guitar player, was also really funny. I mean, musicians are funny anyway. So so this was this group, and then a guy shows up, and another American, and his name is Richard Marin, Rich Marin, named Cheech. He shows up. We're the only two, first of all, probably the only two Latinos in Vancouver in 1970 or 69, whenever it was. And Tommy Chong once told me, he says, I thought you and Cheech were Indians, because we don't have that up here. All we have is drunken Indians coming down from up above, Red Deer. So anyway, Cheech and I have been friends since the day we met, and I speak to him about 3 times a week. He's been a real mentor for me, but I always fuck with him and say, man, how come I'm not in any of your movies?
No kidding, man.
You jerk. Anyway, so that's where I met Cheech, and that's when I got the call from Tommy Bolin, who was a really good friend of mine.
Legend, man.
Oh, Tommy and I went to New York together.
Really?
That's a whole other story. Yeah. When I was back, well, I'm getting, as my girlfriend says, circuitous. Let me get to where I was. So I'm up there with Django. I borrowed some money from my dad to get an A&M Records had been scouting Vancouver, because Chilliwack and there was a bunch of groups that were Terry, this guy, I forget who it was, kind of put Vancouver on the map outside of Toronto being a place where there was artists, but American producers were starting to come up. So this guy named, and if you look him up, his name is Michael Jackson, but he was a producer like with David Anderley for A&M Records. And Django was opening shows for this group. Django was probably one of the best musical experiences I've ever had in my life. And
wow.
And we opened shows for everybody who came through Vancouver at that point. And then we in a 15,000 seater arena, and we do like 5 or 6 songs, and then Chicago would play, or what's his name? Who's the flute player? Jethro Tull.
Ian Anderson, yeah.
These guys that were Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I mean, we were doing those kind of gigs. We had this kind of juice. And then all these bands would come and see us in the After Hours Club and be blown away, man. It was like Gabriel Delorme playing ragas and then doing Hendrix and doing Wes Montgomery, and all in one song. And we had this great singer, great B3 player, and a jazz drummer and saxophone player, and me on bass. We had something really different. And so we got a hit. We were hit up by this producer who said, do a demo. I borrowed $500 from my dad. We went and did a demo. Because I was the only American, I flew down with the demo, met with Michael, and he said, God, I think we sign you guys, but the problem is you're the only American and they're all Canadian. Are they willing to come down here? Well, remember the war, Vietnam War is raging.
Yeah.
My father, who'd come up to visit me, was very much a patriot, but once he saw the news in Canada and the propaganda we were being fed, he said, Kenny, if you have to stay here, I understand. And he was like one of those, when you go into the service, boy, both my brothers were in Korea. Both my brothers were in Korea, and he didn't go to World War II because he had flat feet, so he became a flat foot cop in Denver.
So I remember asking my dad if I was flat footed, and he was like, boy, you ain't flat footed. You could step on an egg without breaking it. So anyway, I digress. So Kenny, back to your story. Tom, did you have something that you had to ask him though?
No, but my dad was a 4F, so we have that in common.
There you go. And now a word from our sponsor. Do you need a voiceover? Need a voice that turns heads and sells your story or makes your explainer video actually fun to listen to? Say hello to Fry on the Fly Productions, the audio playground of Tom Fry, Voice Arts Award winner, veteran actor, writer, musician, and certified man of 1,000 voices. No, really, the Denver Post said it, so it's gotta be true. It's basically law. And you know what? It's also the very same Tom that's here on the Tom and D podcast. Not me, the other guy. He's not as cool, but he's got a better voice. Tom's been doing this for over 25 years, which means you've definitely heard him somewhere. Maybe hawking Arby's or narrating your favorite documentary or doing a dead-on celebrity impression that made you wonder, wait a minute, is Morgan Freeman selling lottery tickets now? From national commercials to network TV, stage to screenplays, Tom has done it all. And then he built a state-of-the-art audio production facility to do it even better. So, you need a voiceover with that pro-grade polish, or a script that sings, or a song that slaps? Fry on the Fly brings that full creative package from mic to final mix. So if you're looking for a top-tier voice talent, expert audio production, or someone who can actually slip into about 12 different accents over lunch, Fry on the Fly is your guy. So just drop him a line at tom@fryonthefly.com. He probably already sounds like someone you trust. And back to the show.
I love that.
Anyway, he was a real patriot. But once he came up there and the news of when you cross that border and listen to what was really going on, man, you know, it was really a mess. So I got landed immigrant status from Tommy Chong's. I still have it. His brother Stanley sponsored me, and I still have my card. And then the lottery came up, and I was a low number. So I had long hair, and I already had a couple. I was thinking, I think I can fool these guys. So I come back to Denver, and I'm in line, and I'm just thinking of my rap, and they have a letters, and then the guy says, "Well, have you taken what it says here? You've taken LSD?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, how many times?" I said, I don't know.
Today? What you're talking about?
150 times in the last month. I don't know. And the guy looked at me, and this, had I been in LA or Los Angeles board, they would have just said, "Yeah, right, buddy." And I would have been a tunnel rat because I'm little. I would have been in Nam the next day. So This guy looked at me, this big white dummy. He looked at me and he said, "I don't. You step out of line." And that was it, man. I got a 4F. I went back to Canada. The Canadian guys did not want to come to the United States, and the deal was in the United States. I get in my car, and I drive back home, and I go back to University of Denver for a year. This is 1971 now. I'm here at DU. I'm staying.
So that's 2 times that you've like been brushed with a chance that probably blew your mind, and then
oh no,
boom.
The Django thing to this day, in many ways, was the most amazing musical experience, because to play not in the stadiums, but to play in this private club, and people like, you know, you've got Ian Anderson and all these people coming and just going, "What the fuck are you guys? This is like, is this not jazz? It's not this. It's not." It was really special. And when I came back home, I did, I put my bass in the corner. I was at my friend's. I'd moved out of my parents' house, and I went. I had a partial scholarship with University of Denver if I played in their orchestra, trumpet. I still had the chops. I still could. I was accepted to Juilliard. I was accepted to 5 different Curtis Institute. All these at my junior year in high school. I was being pitched by my teacher to do this. That's how well I played. But once rock and roll hit, man, And I couldn't. I mean, I played in the orchestra, state orchestra with Eugene Fodor. We were both kids, and I don't know if you know who Eugene Fodor was.
Oh, tell us.
You're kidding.
No.
You're
The
kidding,
name's
right?
familiar, but
Yeah, but
He was on the Johnny Carson show when he was like
That is absolutely wild stuff. Gene Voter, you're on
Fodor. Fodor with an
Oh,
F.
Fodor, Gene.
Look him up. He was from Turkey Creek, Colorado. He was
No
from
kidding.
South Park area, and he was he was an international star. He won the Tchaikovsky. He won all kinds of awards, and he was a celebrity. But he ended up overdosing, shooting blow in his car.
Oh.
But he was one of those kids. I'll never forget that he was the hippest guy I ever met, and I was already starting to get turned off with classical music. And all of a sudden, here's this guy's like smoking a cigarette. We're playing Mackey Auditorium, and we're seniors in high school, and he's smoking a cigarette with a leather jacket. And then you heard this guy play, and you just went, "Oh my God!"
What did he play? What instrument?
He was a violinist.
Oh wow.
You should look him up, bro.
Yeah, I will.
Anyway, so let me finish the story. I am up there. I'm back in Denver. I'm working at a restaurant. I put my bass to the side. Tommy Bolin calls me. He says, "Hey, man, I need you." I said, "For what?" And he said, "Well, I've been to New York. I met all these jazz guys, and I connected with a guy named Jeremy Steig, the jazz flutist. He played with Bill Evans. He's this and that and the other. He's Miles. I mean, he knows everybody, and he's a little older than us, but he's really out there. He's a freak. His father is Joseph Steig, the New Yorker cartoonist. His aunt is Margaret Mead. He comes from this Jewish intellectual family. He's best friends with John Hammond. He grew up with John Hammond Jr., the blues artist. I mean, he is a heavy cat. So, and I said, "But Tommy, man, I don't want to play anymore, man. I'm not into it. I'm going to be a lawyer." And and he says, "You know what? You'll be a real shit lawyer. You need to come up here and do this. I need you, man." And I said, "Well, he's so I did." And I went up and I played with Jeremy Steig and Tommy Bolin and Bobby Berge, who was Tommy's drummer at the time. And I have a tape of it live, and it was mind blowing. And I said, "Okay, I got to finish the school year." And then Tommy and I said, "We'll go to New York." So we went to New York after I finished the year. Tommy and I flew to New York, and we slept on Jeremy's floor, and we opened for Tony Williams' Lifetime.
Wow.
It was, and check out who our band was. It was Jeremy Steig on electric flutes. He's playing 4 different flutes with pedals. Tommy playing Echoplex, unbelievable guitar. I'm playing Fender bass through a small amp, and Eddie Gomez was playing upright bass through a small amp. So you had Eddie Gomez, who was, he took over Scotty LaFaro. If you're hip to Eddie Gomez, you must be check him out. So he's doing that. Alfonso Muzan on drums, and Jan Hammer had just jumped ship from the Polish.
Wow.
So we opened for Tony Williams' Lifetime. Miles was there. John Hammond Jr. came down and offered me a gig to go play some blues, and which I did later. But I realized that I didn't want to be in the jazz scene. Was really scary then. There was a lot of heroin. And Buster Williams, who was playing with Tony, came up to me and he kind of threatened me. He says, "We don't need another bass player in this town." And because, and basically what he was saying was, you guys are taking psychedelics. We're hardcore here, and we need all the work we can get. So if you come here and you take some of our work, I mean, he didn't say that to me directly, but he did in a way. And I told Tommy. Tommy went back to Denver, to Boulder, and John Hammond had offered me a gig. So I went and stayed at John's place and listened to all these tapes his father had made in the 20s. and 30s of Robert Johnson and all this shit that he'd done. And so I was like, whoa, I'm going to go play the blues with John Hammond Jr. And that's what I did that summer. And then I got called back to do studio work in Canada. And that's when Tommy called me and said, a guy named Joe Walsh and his wife have moved to Netherlands, and he's looking for a new bass player. He quit the band, the James Gang, and he's got a drummer, and I told him about you. So I flew down February of 72 or January of 72, borrowed my dad's car, drove up. It was snow up there, and there I meet Joe Walsh, Joe Vitale, and he plays me 2 tracks that he'd recorded in LA of he says, I want to start a group named Barnstorm, and these are 2 tracks that I've cut already with Chuck Rainey on bass, and he played bass on 1 track. And when I heard it, I'm in, and we jammed a little bit, and I drove my dad's car, got planes from Stapleton to Vancouver. I said, I'm sorry, guys, I'm out of here. Packed up my car, the trailer. I was making money. I was doing studio work for a television show. So, and I could triple. I could play trumpet. I could sing. I could play bass. So I couldn't believe I was making money. My dad was really happy.
I'm sure.
So I drove down, and I had a 1941 perfectly restored Chevy. It was in the Jack Nicholson movie, 5 Easy Pieces or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Kenny, I don't know if you can hear us, but you cut out. We'll just hang tight.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are,
okay,
Kenny.
Well, I don't know how much longer I can do this.
Yeah, no, when you have to cut out, just let us know. And
Okay, so let's finish this up and maybe do a part 2 some other time. I mean, you got a lot of stuff here, man. I'm just getting to
that'd
the
be
meat,
awesome.
Okay, so Joe Walsh Barnstorm. Boom. We now we're at Caribou Ranch in Colorado. Joe had a 24 track in his house up in Netherlands, and Bill Simzik, our producer, we were thinking that we can, trying to save money. Oh shit! What time is it? Yeah. I got 5 minutes. Here we go. So, Bill said, "Listen, this guy named Jim Gersio, he's a producer in Chicago, is building a studio just down the road here from us. Let me call him up and see what's happening." Well, it just so happened the studio wasn't finished except for the control room and the recording part. Everything was there. So we went over to Caribou. We were the first band. The Barnstorm record was the first album out of there. We had no hits on that record. Joe Walsh's management were sabotaging any of his solo work to get him to go back with the James Gang, because when he left the James Gang, even though tickets were $3 to get in, they were selling out 15,000 seaters, So anyway, long story short.
Shit, we just lost him again.
That was a real long story short.
Audience, we just lost Kenny.
Yeah.
He's not dead. We just we don't
want to start any rumors. He's fine, but he said he would be more than happy to come back because, dude, he has worked with Elton John.
Yeah.
He has worked with Hall & Oates. He has worked with Dan Fogelberg. He has worked with Ringo. I mean, he has played with, so many different people. And and his stories are so detailed, and the memory that he has is just outstanding. So we will have him back on again for sure to finish part 2.
There's so much more to get to here.
Yeah, we got to have him back on, dude.
I have so much to talk to him about.
Yeah, we have so many questions for him, and he's done so much more. I mean, he's worked with Elton John. We haven't even gotten to the Elton John part. It's like Hall & Oates, so many things.
Like, there's a lot of stuff too. Like, I worked on a movie with Cheech Marin in 94 or 93. I think it was called $1,000,000 to 1. Like, back in my earliest days in LA.
And that was one of my first voice impressions. So it goes, You can keep on knocking, but you can't come in. Hey, man. And then I do my Chong. Did you put that in your mouth already? Yeah, man. What was it, man? You just took the most acid I've ever seen anyone take at one time. So we will have him back on again for sure to finish part 2. This is just the beginning. We will have Kenny back on, and hopefully we'll have a little less technical difficulties. But man, I mean, he's such an interesting guy.
Tom, thanks for bringing him on. Let's get this part 2 lined up soon. So later dude. Tom and D.
2 middle-aged idiots.
This podcast is produced by 224 Media with voice and audio support by Fry on the Fly Productions.